So if you're currently running a Google Ads campaign, or you're thinking about running a Google Ads campaign, and you're just not quite sure what bid strategy to use, today we're going to go over all of that. I'm going to cover a few things in today's video. We're going to go over the different bid strategies. I'll kind of walk you through all of them, let you know what I think about them and what I use. I'm going to go through my strategy of what bid strategies I typically use on my campaigns. And number 3, I'm going to go over some caveats as to why sometimes I don't even switch my campaigns over to maximize conversions or any of the conversion-based bidding strategies. So if you're new here, my name is Chris. I cover all things Google Ads, local lead generation, all that kind of stuff. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's just hop right in. All right, so to check our bid strategies, the first thing what we need to do is we need to go into our campaign settings. So first off, obviously make sure you have your campaign selected. Then you go to settings, and this is where we can start to access our different bid strategies. So if we come down here to bidding, you can see right now this campaign is running manual CPC, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail as to why I'm running manual CPC on this one in particular, and some caveats to the things that I'm going to talk about clicks-based bidding strategies versus conversion-based bidding strategies and all that kind of stuff. So if we just go in here and hit change bid strategy, it should give you options to select different bid strategies. If you don't see this list here, there should be a little link right here that says select a bid strategy directly or something like that. You can click on that, and then it should give you the list of bid strategies here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to go down this list, kind of talk through the different bid strategies, and then I'm going to go over what I tend to do for my campaigns, and then finally go over some kind of caveats that you got to look out for when it comes to switching to conversion-based bidding strategies and all that kind of stuff. First bid strategy on this list is maximize clicks. Pretty much what you're telling Google with this bid strategy, as you can see it right here, is your goal with this strategy is to essentially get as many clicks as you can in a given day within your daily budget. Now, it's really, really important with this particular bid strategy that you want to set a maximum cost per click. Now, this is obviously going to depend on your industry, the keywords going after, all that kind of stuff. And you want to make sure you don't set this too low, because if you set it too low, Google's not going to send you any traffic. But it's really important that you put in this cost per click bid limit, because if you don't, Google will bid whatever they want. So you could be like a tree service company or something like that, and then you could get charged like $80 for a click. So you don't want to do that. Make sure you set a maximum cost per click bid limit. This is one of those bid strategies that I tend to use a lot when I'm starting a campaign, because I want to get traffic going through the campaign, and I want to start collecting conversions on the campaign to start building up that data. So if you want traffic, maximize clicks is a great option. Also, Google handles all the bidding on their end, so you don't have to worry about setting bids or anything like that. So it's a great option if you don't want to be bothered with setting bids on keywords and all that kind of stuff. Moving on down the list, you have maximize conversions. So maximize conversions on its own without this target cost per action right here will pretty much just tell Google, similar to maximize clicks, go get me as many conversions as possible within my daily budget. So a conversion is obviously, whatever you set as a conversion. Typically on my campaigns, I'm setting phone calls as conversions, and I'm setting form fills as conversions. So when I select a maximize conversions bid strategy, I'm pretty much telling Google, hey, go get me as many phone calls and as many form fills as possible within my daily budget. And typically what I do is further on down the line, when I have more conversions, I switch over to this bid strategy. And I'll talk about that in a second when I go over my strategies and all that kind of stuff. The thing with maximize conversions is sometimes, and again, there's a lot of gray area with this. Sometimes it can go a little bit haywire if you don't set a target cost per action. What I've found with maximize conversions is it's really, really dependent upon daily budget and cost per click and all that kind of stuff, where typically what I do is I tend to just set a target cost per action. And what you're telling Google here is I want to get as many conversions either at or below or a little bit above this target cost per action, because you can set it at, say, like $25 or something like that. And you might get leads for $23, you might get leads for $27, but the whole idea here is you're telling Google, I want to get leads for as close to this number as possible. And typically that's what I do. I've noticed on campaigns with smaller daily budgets, just having it maximize conversions on its own seems to work pretty well. But again, it's super, super dependent on your industry. I found it to work well in auto detailing, but that typically is lower daily budgets, lower cost per click, all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those things you're going to have to test, see what works. But typically what I do with maximize conversions, set a target cost per action, and go with that. Going further down the list here, we have maximize conversion value. Now, transparently, I don't use these two bid strategies because they are not aligned with the goals that I have for my campaigns and my clients, because these are typically either, for e-commerce, or I'll get into impression share in a second, but maximize conversion value, for example, is you're telling Google that I want to try to get the most return on my ad spend as possible. So this is really relevant when you're running e-commerce, like you're selling a product online or something like that. And when you feed that sales data back into Google, you're essentially telling Google like, hey, a conversion for this product or this, program that I sell or whatever is worth this amount of money. You can feed that back into Google, select maximize conversion value, and then you're essentially telling Google like, hey, I want to try to get the most sales of that product with the best return possible. So that's where this kind of stuff comes in. Like I said, I don't use this because all of my clients are lead gen clients, kind of local businesses. If you are in e-commerce, this could be a good option, but I'll go into what you most likely want to do first before switching to this bid strategy. Similarly to the other bid strategies, you can set a target return on ad spend right here, and ROAS, that's return on ad spend. And you're pretty much telling Google like, hey, I want to try to get a 2 times return on ad spend, a 3 times return on ad spend. And similar to other bid strategies, there's obviously a limit to this. You can't just tell Google, hey, get me a 20 times return on ad spend, because they're just going to be like, we can't do that. We can't bid effectively. We can't display your ads effectively to get you that kind of return on ad spend. It's one of those things you'll have to test. Like I said, I am not the e-commerce expert for this. So there's definitely going to be other channels that are going to be better at explaining what you want to do with this and your strategies with this. But that is the maximize conversion value bid strategy. Going further down the list, we have target impression share. Again, this is one that I don't use for my clients, because the goal of this bid strategy is literally just to try to have your ads show up on a specific part of the page. And for me, like I said, my goal is to get conversions. My goal is to get leads, and selecting a bid strategy that is mainly aligned with where my ads are showing on the page is really not as relevant to me. But if you are concerned with where your ads are showing up on the page, this is a bid strategy that would fit that. So what you can do right here, you can see where do you want your ads to appear. You can say anywhere on the results page, or you could say, hey, I want my ads to show up in the top 3, which is top of results page. Or if you want your ad to show absolute top of results page, you can select that and then let Google do all the bidding to do that. But what's going to happen in that case is Google is going to bid a lot of money to make sure that your ad is at the very top of search results. And if you are a business owner that is more interested in that, or you want to outrank your competition or whatever, this would be the bid strategy to go with. And obviously you can refine it with, percentage impression share, cost per click, bid limit, all this kind of stuff. Setting these, like I said, with the other bid strategies could restrict things. So if you want to show up at the top of the results, but you're only willing to pay $10 per click, but your competitors are paying, $40, $50 plus per click, you're probably not going to show up at the top of the results page. So this is a bid strategy. Like I said, I don't really use, but if you are concerned with where you're showing up on the page, this is an option you can go with. And finally, we have the lone manual bid strategy remaining here. We have manual CPC. And this is essentially, you're just on a keyword by keyword level, you are setting the actual cost per click per each keyword. And this is one of those bid strategies where if you want a little bit more manual control, you can go on a keyword level and set the cost per click. I found this bid strategy useful in a lot of campaigns that have kind of a wider range of cost per click between keywords. There's some industries that I've worked in where one keyword could be $25 and another keyword could be $10. And typically what you can do with something like maximize clicks is you could just set the cost per click bid limit to closer to that higher keyword, and then it should include the lower keywords in there as well. And you should get the cost per click kind of balancing out. But sometimes I will go manual CPC if I want a little bit more control over that, where I can set the cost per click bid limit at the keyword level. And then also another good thing with manual CPC is it will actually start getting traffic quicker. Whereas if we go with maximize clicks, usually when you start the campaign, Google needs a few days to kind of start to learn and start to slowly display your ads. Whereas manual CPC, Google will just start displaying the ads. And as long as your bids are competitive, you should show up well and all that kind of stuff. There's not a learning process and all that kind of stuff. But with maximize clicks, there is a learning process. So that's one of those things you got to keep in mind. So it kind of depends upon how granular of control you want. Maximize clicks is going to be much simpler. manual CPC, you're going to have a lot more control. And then on top of that, how quickly do you need traffic going to the campaign? If like you want traffic today, not in every case this will happen, but usually the quickest way is manual CPC, and then maximize clicks will take a little bit longer, but the trade-off is, kind of simplicity versus complexity and all that kind of stuff. But that's a quick rundown on the different bid strategies. Now I want to talk a little bit about what I do typically on a lot of my campaigns. So typically what you want to do when it comes to bid strategies, and this is kind of the way I was taught, this is the way I have been doing it to this day, is if you're starting a campaign fresh and you don't have any conversion data going to the campaign, like you haven't tracked conversions for phone calls or form fills or whatever your conversion data is, and Google doesn't even know what a conversion is, if you just go straight to maximize conversions or something like that, you're essentially telling Google to go after something that it has no idea about. You're telling Google, say like, hey, I want phone calls or form fills or whatever, and Google has no idea what those are because you haven't actually tracked those as conversions. You haven't fed that data back into Google. So typically what I do with every campaign is I will always start a campaign on a clicks-based bidding strategy. So a lot of times I will just use maximize clicks, and then I'll set a maximum cost per click bid limit. But in some cases, like this campaign right here, I just have it set to manual CPC. That seemed to work the best, and it's been doing well ever since then. So pretty much it doesn't really matter which one you choose. Like I talked about kind of the trade-offs before. Pick either maximize clicks or manual CPC, and then let that run. And then typically after you let that run, after you get about 20 to 30 conversions within a 30-day window, is when you can start to think about switching to a conversion-based bidding strategy, because then you've actually fed some data into Google. But what I've been doing recently is I've been letting the campaign get even more conversions before switching it over, because I want to feed even more data into Google before making that bid strategy switch. So typically what I'll do, start maximize clicks or manual CPC. I will let Google get something like 50 conversions. And then typically what I'll do is I'll switch over to maximize conversions and then set a target cost per action. Now, like I said, that's kind of the standard that I go with, but there are caveats to the conversion-based bid strategy that I've learned. And I'm going to go into why this particular campaign is still on manual CPC after an entire year, and why there are certain times when I just don't even switch to a conversion-based bidding strategy. I'll just keep it on a clicks-based bidding strategy because honestly, it just ends up performing better in certain instances. So let me go back to the campaign view, and then I'll show you why in some cases I just don't even switch to a conversion-based bid strategy. So over the past like 2 or 3 years, I've noticed a few different things that seem to impact maximize conversions. Now, I don't have this information directly from Google or anything like that, so I'm really just kind of going off of gut feeling and what I've noticed and what I've heard from other people. But the first thing that I've noticed is switching to maximize conversions or target CPA tends to not work if you're just not getting enough conversions within a 30-day window. So if your daily budget just isn't high enough or something like that, like let's say, assuming your conversion rate's good, everything else is looking fine, and you're only getting like 17 conversions in a month, typically what I find is like that's just not enough data for Google to go off of on a monthly basis to like make those conversion-based bidding strategies work. And what I've found is just kind of sticking with a clicks-based bidding strategy seems to give me a bit more consistency on a month-to-month basis compared to if I just don't have the daily budget to get enough leads in a month to really make it work. And typically what I recommend is conversion-based bidding strategy when it comes to the number of leads per month tends to work better if you are, at 20 to 30 leads a month on average at least, is right around when I've seen it work better compared to if you are lower than that number. Going off of the daily budget stuff as well, another thing that I've found is if your cost per conversion is too close to the daily budget, I've also found target CPA or maximize clicks to kind of struggle in that case as well. Really the theme that I've noticed with a lot of conversion-based bidding strategy is that Google needs room. Like they need room to operate. If you have too much of a cap when it comes to the daily budget, and if you have too much of a cap when it comes to search impression share, which I'll talk about in a second, Google tends to really struggle in my experience. And Google seems to do better with conversion-based bidding strategy when it has room to figure out its bidding and kind of bid a little higher, bid a little lower. And if you don't have that space within your budget or within your market or anything like that to actually allow Google to figure itself out, I've found conversion-based bidding strategies tend to struggle in those cases. So number one, like I mentioned, not having enough leads in a month, which is also tied to daily budget. So not enough leads would mean not enough daily budget. And if you don't have enough daily budget and that cost per lead is too close to what your daily budget is, I found it to struggle. And then the third thing, kind of going off of that same idea of not having enough room, is if your search impression share is pretty much capped. And search impression share, this is essentially the number of searches that you are showing up for in your given market. So based on the keywords we're bidding on and all that kind of stuff on this particular campaign, over the last, I think what I have 120 days, we're hitting 93% search impression share. So pretty much what that means is I am within our location targeting and our existing keywords and all that kind of stuff. We're pretty much capped in this market. And in my experience on this campaign, I've tried switching this one to a max conversions or target CPA like 3 different times over the past like year and a half. Every single time it just doesn't work well. And I think a big reason for that is I'm pretty much capped on search impression share. Now, there are different things that I could probably do to get more search impression share between adding more keywords and all that kind of stuff. But we already have a lot of the keywords in there. Like there's not some weird treasure trove of keywords that I haven't discovered or something like that. Like it's all window tinting. It's all auto window tinting. There's not like this, magic lever that I can pull to get more search impression share. And because they have a physical location, I can't just like widen out the location targeting. So we're kind of capped in that regard. And on this particular campaign, because I can't get more out of the market and it's sort of like based on the season and demand and all that kind of stuff, every time I've switched this one to a maximize conversions or target CPA, it's just gotten so confused, hasn't worked well. Every time I go back to a clicks-based bidding strategy, it starts working perfectly fine again. So in this particular case, I just said, screw it. I'm going to keep it on manual CPC. It's been manual CPC outside of those tests for over a year at this point. You can see it's converting perfectly fine. Last 30 days, it's pretty much 30% conversion rate. And those are the few instances where I've found there is nuance to using maximize conversions. Like I can give you that process of like gather data, switch to max conversions, et cetera, et cetera. But there's certain cases where I've followed that process and it just hasn't worked well. And the biggest theme I've found between all of that is that Google just needs room. If Google's not going to have room for that conversion-based bidding strategy to work, I found that just leaving it on like a clicks-based bidding strategy tends to provide me a little bit more stability, a little bit more consistency, and it just doesn't confuse Google as much. So that's pretty much it. That is sort of the rundown on bid strategies. That is what I tend to do for my campaigns. Then also some of those caveats that I have found within my own campaigns and what's worked and what's not worked. So that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you got a little bit of value out of it. If you did, I would appreciate liking the video, subscribing to the channel. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below. And if you are a business owner looking to set up and run a campaign for your own business, in the description below, there is a link to a consultation form. I can check it out, see if I can help you out. And if I can, I will let you know. And then also, if you are running your campaigns yourself and you're looking for resources and tools and all that kind of stuff, there is a link to tools that I recommend down in the description. You can check that out and see the different things that I use on a daily basis. But that is pretty much it for this video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.